Hi everybody, I'm Todd and I hope you're having a great week. I get a lot of questions about studio monitor controllers. What are they? Do I need one? What specs should I look for? What other features matter? And how is it going to make a difference in my studio? So I thought I'd create a beginner's guide to get you started. Now, studio monitors come in a wide range of price, from under $100 up to several $1,000s, and there certainly is a difference in performance, controls, features. But for this video, I'm going to focus on controllers that are appropriate for a home or project studio. They're all going to be 2-channel units and they're going to be of a desktop format. Now, there are many options for studio monitor controllers for your home or project studio, but first let's take a look at whether in fact you need one. Now, many of you will have an audio interface. I'm going to use this Focusrite Scarlett as an example, and you'll see on it has a monitor level control. It also has a headphone amplifier, so a level control, headphone output, and on the back there's one set of monitor outputs. And so if you have one set of monitors and one set of headphones, that may be all you need. You may not need to have any other additional separate monitor controller. And of course, depending what interface you have, you might have the ability to drive more than one set of monitors and more than one set of headphones. Now, if you need a little more advanced functionality switching, you may go to a separate dedicated monitor controller. And I have two categories here. I have passive, which is this Mackie Big Knob Studio. It does not use electronic amplification to change the sound or to alter or control the sound. It doesn't use conversion, anything like that. Whereas active controllers like this Mackie Big Knob Studio and this Audient Nero will use electronics. They use amplification to control the sound. Now, that's going to give you the ability to use more features. The question is always, which one is going to produce the least impact on the sound? Because when we drive sound through a controller, we don't want to change its character. We don't want to change the tone. We don't want to change the dynamics. Nothing to do at all with stereo image, crosstalk. Those are all really important things. So let me start with talking about the big knob, which is the passive, the most basic design. In essence, we have a volume control on here, level control, just like on the audio interface. This particular unit allows us to connect two sources, as well as actually a headphone output here from like a phone or something like that with a 3.5mm jack, and then two sets of monitors. And so the nice thing is that we can then switch back and forth between the sources and between the monitors. So we can A/B test different sources and different monitors right back and forth. It also has a mono mode, so we can check mono right away without having to do anything in our DAW. There's a mute control as well as dim. So if we just want to lower the level, maybe we have a producer in the room, a musician, someone we want to speak to, we don't have to stop everything, no changes again. We can just dim the sound, lower it down. Now, this unit, again, being passive, uses a dual potentiometer design. So there are two potentiometers linked to this one control. And so one for each channel, right and left. They're going to raise and lower the signal level being passed through here. One of the downsides to that is they're not always identical across the board. So each potentiometer might have slight variances, which could alter the stereo image. And even when we're turning it from one level to the next, we could find that maybe the right channel goes up slightly before the left channel. Now, it's going to be very quick, but it's enough for our ears to pick that up in some cases. Now, everything is always within the monitoring capabilities of your room and your actual studio monitors. But that's a very basic unit and is a good solution for some people. Next, I'm going to take a look here at the Mackie Studio, the Big Knob Studio. And so once again, we have that sort of trademark big knob control here for the level. In this case, though, we have a lot of other features. First of all, I'll show you on the back. This unit is available and takes microphones as well as line level inputs. So if we want to use this with microphones, it actually has a built-in interface 2x2 to go to the computer. And so we can have line in and line out from the computer, microphones in. This could in fact be your audio interface if that's all the channels that you need. Now, it also has the ability to output to two separate studio monitors on here. And again, we have capabilities to go ahead and use headphones with this. And you'll see this has a couple of headphone outputs as well as a small output here for 3.5mm. On the front of the unit, there's a number of controls. Because we have microphone inputs, we have gain, preamp, we have 48 volt phantom power available. We can use these in stereo or dual mono if we want. We also have a monitoring control here for direct monitoring. We can use headphone outputs at different levels if we want to do that. We can also adjust what we're listening to because we have inputs 1, 2, 3, 4, and also the USB input from the interface that's built into this. So we can monitor any of those. Of course, we can switch back and forth between the two monitors, but this also lets us have both on at the same time. Not always necessary, but if you're using one set, for example, for subwoofer, that might be a use case for this as well, where you'd want to have both. It also has trim controls that lets you balance the levels between the two. So if you're going to A/B between two sets of monitors, you're not dealing with a change in level that's going to throw your ears off. So that's kind of an important thing here. This, of course, just like the big knob, has a mono feature, mute and dim. And on top of that, we get a talkback microphone. So if we're using this with musicians from a control room, they're in a different room, we want to be able to speak to them, we can do that. Gives us a momentary switch to that for that, as well as a level control. There's a built-in microphone as well. This is a powered unit, and the nice thing about this one is that the power cord, although it's a wall wart, it has a thread-on connector, so once it's put in there and connected, it's not going to fall out. So that's kind of a really useful thing about this unit. Now, the next one we'll take a look at here is the Audient Nero. This one's a little more advanced than the others. This one has quite a few electronic controls in it. And at the end of the day, I'll start again with what we have on the back. So this particular unit is going to allow us to have multiple monitors, again, three sets of monitors, so a main and two alternates, and also gives us 4 headphone amplifiers. Now we also have Q input and source 1 and 2. There's an unbalanced set of RCAs on here instead of a 3.5 millimeter jack. Again, that'd be for any kind of consumer audio you want to connect up to this. And this also has an external mic control. On the back, we also see SPDIF in the form of coax and optical. So if we want to bring a digital signal into this from our audio interface, we can go ahead and do that and have the conversion in the unit here. Now we're then using the Audient converters as opposed to the analog signal path from our interface converter. So you have to decide what's better. These are pretty high-end converters in here, so these may be superior to what's in your audio interface. But if you have a high-end audio interface, the converters in there may be superior and you may want to use a full analog signal path. So different options on this unit. Now here again, we have controls for a talkback microphone built in, or we can again use an external talkback mic with this. Our auxiliary input is adjustable to be either the SPDIF or with the analog aux, and again we have a level trim control for that. On the unit itself, we have controls for the inputs and the outputs. And what's interesting about this, again, is we can assign different sources to different outputs, different combinations of sources, and we can also go ahead and control our level with functions here for dim, cut. We also have mono here, and we can even flip the phase on this if we want. So that's a nice thing to have. Now we have a subwoofer control that's dedicated on here as well, and that can be combined with any of the main or 2 alternate monitor sets. We can manually switch these off and on, but this unit has built-in memory, so we can pre-configure it so that we don't have to switch back and forth between them all. I'm not going to go over the detailed operation of all these units today. This is to give you an idea of the features. I'll have full reviews of each of them with a lot of diagnostic audio tests, as well as a full walkthrough of how the controllers work. But then in terms of the headphone amplifiers, you'll see we have 4 headphone outputs here, and each one of these can have its own source or matching the source from one to the other. So our control room might have a master mix we're listening to, whereas individual musicians may have a Q mix that's a little bit different. And so we can send whatever we want to each of the outputs. And so again, on the front here, we have headphone output number 1 in the form of a 1/4-inch jack and a 3.5 millimeter, with the other 3 headphone outputs being on the back. More controls here. Now, other differences between the two. With the passive, we talked about the dual potentiometer, so it really is just a volume control that's lowering the level, and it's susceptible to having, again, that imbalance from one channel to the next when we're lowering the level. The Mackie big knob, although it's active, it works the same way. It's not using electronics to adjust the volume level. That's all done with that dual potentiometer design. Whereas in the Nero, we actually have electronic step circuitry. Now, some of these monitor controllers will actually have a physical step dial on them, and what that's doing is allowing you to easily recall the sound. The downside, of course, is that you have limited number of level settings. And so this is an infinite sweep, which means that electronically inside, it's using a chip that steps the level control of both channels at exactly the same time. There's no variance as we're adjusting the level control, so that's not going to throw off our hearing in any way. The downside, of course, is not being stepped. Recall is not as precise, so we can line up to any one of the notches on here, and we're not going to have any difference when we're going up and down in the signal in terms of the image, the stereo width or otherwise, but control is not quite as precise in terms of recall as a step switch. So that's one negative on this unit. This is also a powered unit. Here it does not have a threaded connector. That's something that would have been nice to see, as this is sort of the highest end of what I'm showing you today in basic units. So having that thread on power connector just means it's never going to pull out on you. So that's a good thing to have. Unfortunately not here, but is on the Big Knob Studio. Now I've connected up the Big Knob Studio so you can see some of the other advantages of an active design. With the Mackie design, there are no displays, nothing here. It's just switches off and on, nothing powered. When we get up to an active unit like the Big Knob Studio, you're going to get a visualization of the audio levels. So that's going to allow you to see what's coming in. Notice it doesn't change when I dial this back. This is based on what's coming in. So we can just see if it's clipping, if it's at the level we want it to be at. Now, of course, we can have our selection. I have the source here connected into 3.4, but I can use other sources in combination if I want to do that as well. And we get the ability to trim that source so we could balance it if we like. So a lot of functionality. Switch here to mono if we want to get a mono image. So again, many features that are available on an active unit as well as visual display. Now I switched over to the Audient Nero so you can see some of the controls and displays you get with this unit. You can see again here we have a signal level coming in. This is our input signal level. It's not adjusted by this control. This control is for the monitor out. So this is just showing us if we have an appropriate amount of signal coming in. Now you can see here our controls right now. We're monitoring through the main output with source number 1, but I can switch to any source or any outputs I like. The other thing that's nice about this is there's recall. So if I push and hold any of these buttons down, I can then select what source I want to have for that output. I can even decide if I want the subs to automatically come on with that. I push it again, and now every time I push this button, it's going to switch to this. If I switch to another output, we're not going to have a different setting that's been pre-saved. So it's nice that it has that memory feature in there. We can do the same thing with the headphone outputs on here. We also get a mono, so if we want to check our mono signal, and we have the ability to dim and cut. So again, controls here, the active units give us a little more, and it's nice to have that input level just to make sure our signal's where we want to see it. Now this, of course, is not a full review of these monitor controllers, but I want to give you an idea of what I think is the most important aspect of any monitor controller, which is it should sound like nothing. It should have no impact on the sound going through it. And so I've set up a bit of a test where I'm coming out of the Orion 32 Plus Gen 3 into the controller, and then back out of the controller into the Orion 32 Plus Gen 3. So it's in the loop. Yes, there's DA and AD conversion going on, but the converters in the Orion are pretty transparent. On the screen for visualization on the left-hand side, we have before the monitor controller, and on the right-hand side, after the monitor controller. And so for those of you that like to visualize, see the stereo image, that's going to be there. Ears are most important thing, so I hope you're listening with good headphones or a good monitoring system. And I'm going to do some A/B tests here using Pipeline. I'll take the monitor controller in and out of the signal, and then I'll also do a test with the adjusting the volume on the controller. And so first we'll hear the Big Knob passive controller. I'll go ahead and I'll adjust the levels with the controller. You can keep an eye on the stereo image and also listen for any difference in tone. Now we'll adjust the level with the controller. Now we'll go ahead and adjust the levels so you can hear again if there's any difference in tone, as well as look at the difference for image. And so let me know in the comments below if you could hear or see a difference when I inserted any of these monitor controllers into the signal path. Now, one thing I will mention from working with them for a while is that the linearity of control is very different between them. So on the Big Knob and Big Knob Studio, they both use a dual potentiometer design. And so what I found is that as I turned it, I had to have quite a bit of rotation before there was any noticeable gain reduction. And so it wasn't very linear at all across the range. Whereas with the Audient Nero, the level is electronically step controlled. So this dial actually activates internal circuitry that steps the signal in an even fashion all the way around. And it is very linear all the way across. I did find that. The one thing I don't like is this is not stepped, as in a physically stepped switch, which makes recall difficult. Yes, it's marked with lines all the way around, but it's not as precise as step switches. On the other hand, you get more variability when it isn't stepped. So there's a trade-off with everything, but I just thought that's something you should know. Now, I'll give you a few final thoughts on monitor controllers, and the first for me is always going to be, does it alter the sound in any way passing through it? What we really want is something completely transparent. If it changes the tone, changes the stereo image, that's going to be a problem because what we're hearing versus what we're recording are not the same thing. And this naturally is all within the capabilities of our monitors and room that we're listening in. So you always have to keep that in mind. Beyond that, when you're adjusting the level of the signal, does it adjust it evenly for all channels? These are all 2-channel units we're looking at, but it would be the same if we were looking at a multi-channel situation. We want all channels to be stepped up and down at the same time. Otherwise, that's going to alter the image and that's going to throw our ears off. So that's a really important thing to consider when getting a monitor controller. Beyond that, take a look at the I/O you need. If you have multiple sets of monitors, it's nice to be able to A/B them one to the other, and controls to do that are going to be really handy on your monitor controller. Same thing with headphones. If you need a headphone output, do you need one or do you need multiple? Are you going to be using it only to listen to one mix, or do you want to have the ability to have separate mixes, separate inputs, maybe cue sources? And so these are things to consider as well. This is not an advanced guide. There certainly are controllers that have far more features than what we've looked at today, but this will give you an idea of where to get started in a project studio with a controller that's going to help you level up instead of just add additional complexity to your rig. Now, if you're looking for other ideas for your home or project studio, check out one of the videos on the screen. I appreciate you joining me today, and I will see you next time.